Okay, I don't know if I counted slow enough, but I hope we are on the screen and live. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are back on A Coffee with Carla. I've got two awesome ladies today who are going to join me in the conversation about forgiveness. So we're going to start with Lana Lee is going to introduce herself, and then Suzanne Boehs will introduce herself. So go ahead, Lana, and I'm going to get sharing.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lana. Carla and I have been in each other's lives for a very long time.
Yes, we
Um,
have.
yeah, I am here. I'm joining these lovely gals. We're going to talk about forgiveness this morning, and just share, I think, our hearts and our stories and our perception and our challenges with forgiveness and for me, the biggest part is just how the act of forgiveness, even when I didn't receive the apology, has set me free. So that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's why I honestly like that was well, there's many reasons why I wanted to have you on, but that is one of the big ones, so for
Right.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Suzanne, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, well, I'm delighted to be here, Carla and Lana. It's so good to meet you in this space. Hopefully someday we can meet in person.
Yeah.
As Carla said, I'm Suzanne Boehs, and I haven't known Carla very long, but we've done a couple lives together. And like she says, I have a love for words. And I never think that our words should be used flippantly or carelessly because they are so powerful. So when she said she was digging into like the definition of words, I was like, yeah, that's totally my passion. So
Right.
for me, forgiveness has been something that has been a completely inside job. It has nothing to do with anybody or with circumstances. It has everything to do with me and what's going on within me and where I want to find myself in the future versus myself always in the past. And I've also found that with forgiveness comes the ability, while the story, it becomes a powerful story and it doesn't hold the ick that before forgiveness it has held. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you, Carla,
Yeah. Oh,
for
you're
this moment.
welcome. Yeah, I think the reason forgiveness came up in my thinking was I think every single person struggles with it in various forms, whether it's ourselves, whether it's someone we've, that's supposed to love us the most, there's been hurt there and different things. And I know for myself, I had not a marriage that was not good the first time around. And there was a huge amount of forgiveness I had to get to in order to let that stuff go. And Lana was the one who got it through my thick head finally. So, yeah, I think we can all kind of bring a different aspect of it, in our own experiences and what we're doing. So, Lana, I'm going to start with you because you have you've had many things go on and been through in your life, but I wanted to touch base with this topic about not getting the apology from the person. So maybe give a little backstory to that and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So a big part of my story back a ways was who I was raised by and how I was raised. And so my mom, who is with Jesus now, uh was an alcoholic, and my stepdad was an alcoholic, and I was raised by them, and unfortunately became an alcoholic myself. 13 and a half years in recovery now. And it's taken 13 and a half years like the journey's not over. I'm still in the process of forgiving my mom. I mean, she left this earth years ago, and I'm still triggered by things. I still struggle with some things that, you know, that she said and did, that something will happen, especially in the calling on my life. We foster, and so there's a ton of triggers
Right.
that happen for me fostering these little people.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, just a little bit of um, backstory. So um, there was, with my mom, being raised by my mom right into my adulthood life, there was uh, mental abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. My mom was very aggressive and just had a lot of her own yuck going on.
Mhm.
Um, so when I got sober and stepped into the recovery journey, um, I was seeing a mental health therapist, and I was seeing a addictions counselor, and I was seeing them on a weekly basis. I was very, very committed to getting well and to figuring out why I was making the choices that I was making, um, and why was I okay with people treating me the way they were treating me, for instance, my mom. Why was
Mhm.
I okay with not telling her, you can't, this is not okay, you can't abuse me like this? um so after about 6 months of some pretty intense conversation through this counseling, uh my counselor, you know, she looked at me and she said, why do you feel the need to keep your mom in your life? And I said, because she's my mom. And she said, but that's all she is. She's your mom right now. She's not nurturing you. She's not being kind to
Mhm.
you. There's no friendship. It's just a hostile, narcissistic, abusive, manipulative relationship. So why?
Mhm.
And I said, well, again, I said, well, you don't just, like, you don't just cut people out of your lives, especially your mom, for goodness sake. Like, she's my mom.
Right.
And she
Mhm.
said, why not? And she was so forthright when she said it. She said, why not? I said, because she's my mom. And she said, I don't care who she is. Here's her face. Here's her title. They don't have to, you can separate the two.
Wow.
And as soon as she said that, I was like, wait, what?
You
It was
like
like ding,
that's
ding, ding, ding,
huge.
ding. No, it was profound. It was that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I never thought of separating the two, right? And removing the title of mom and just dealing with her yuck here. So we started to work on that for a little bit, and I I needed to gain some confidence and some strength within me to be able to stand up to my mom, because that had never ever been something that I could do.
Yeah, let's just talk about that for a second because this
Yeah.
is also why I want to have these conversations because I want people to understand because social media's this is where social media fails us in my opinion.
Yeah.
You see the beginning and you see the end. Nobody
Mm.
sees the middle hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
we can talk about that for a minute,
Yeah.
that process to gain that strength, and it's going to be different for everybody,
Right.
obviously,
Yeah.
but for you,
Yeah.
how, what did you do to get to that space of being confident enough to finally stand your ground?
Well, it was, you know, it was that epiphany moment in the therapist's office that day about separating the two. And then we just focused on that. um, through addictions counseling and through just mental health therapy. And just we started talking about um, my mom and some of her behaviors and the things that she would say to me and how that made me feel. And um, honestly, it was just a process of finding someone that I felt safe enough with to talk about my mom and to talk about how I felt about how she treated me, because I mean, years ago, even when I would say something to you about how she was treating me, I never gave you all the details.
Right.
I would just be like, "Oh, she makes me so mad and she said this,
Right.
it wasn't very nice and blah blah blah." Yet in my mind, I'm thinking like she ripped my freaking heart out and tore it to
Mhm.
shreds and stomped all over it, and it's killing me.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it's slowly killing me, her behavior. But what I didn't realize that during that, the lifetime of that, and then starting to work through things, is that every time she wounded me, every time she hurt me in some way, more and more resentment and anger and hate. Like what I mean, I hate to say that I hated my mom, but I felt like I hated my mom for a long time. um I remember when I got the phone call that she had passed, um, I was devastated. Um, but I will be honest, there was a massive sense of relief,
Mhm.
because for me, it
Yeah.
was over. It was the abuse. The abuse was over,
Right.
and her torment was over. Um, but it was it was figuring out through therapy and stuff that, okay, I'm feeling icky and I'm feeling gross, and now I'm starting to act in a toxic way. And much of that, I truly believe, was, yes, it was trauma throughout
Mhm.
my life that had me in that mindset and that way of thinking. Um, but it was also this, like, unforgiveness is literally poisonous. It's literally toxic to your body.
Yeah.
If there was a way for, like, medical professionals to come up with a way where they could look at the inside of somebody's body after they died and go, they died from unforgiveness.
Ooh,
Yeah.
wow.
Seriously, like, it makes you sick if you, like. And I had to get to this place where my mom is living her life was living her life.
Mhm.
My mom wasn't sitting ever thinking about me and how she was tormenting me. My
Right.
mom wasn't thinking about what she was doing to me. My mom was thinking about herself, because my mom was mentally ill and she was an addict.
Yeah.
She wasn't thinking about how her actions and her behavior and her words were wounding me, right?
Right.
She was just carrying on with her life every day and doing what she was doing. It
Yeah.
wasn't much of a quality of life, but she was still, right.
Yeah.
And so it gets to this place where you're like, "Hey, why am I dying inside
Yes.
for you? Like,
Y-
I'm not drinking your poison anymore,
Yeah.
because you're killing me, and this is my life." And so I just I had to take charge, and so I did. I Long story short, and I mean, that's a whole um it's a beautiful story. But the short of it is that I decided that that was it, and I cut my mom out of my life after one phone call. She made a phone call to me um on Christmas Day, and
Mm.
it was it was awful. It was Her behavior and her words were more hurtful in that 3-minute phone call than they'd ever been my whole life, I'm sure. And I just knew it was time. And so I hung up on her. She was raging and screaming, and I hung up on her. I actually, my anxiety was so bad from that. I actually took tea towels out of the drawer and covered the phones after turning the ringers off so that I couldn't see her, because she just started calling back, and like over and over.
Right.
I had to change my cell phone number. When she couldn't reach me that way, she had family members reaching out to me saying, "Who do you think you are? You have no right to cut your mom out of your life, you horrible person." And
Yeah.
I actually said to a couple people that spoke into my life about that, "You have not walked 1 second in my shoes in my relationship with mom. So
Mhm.
don't tell me what's okay. I have to do what's good for me now." And my mom was a sinking ship, and I was coming out the other side of that. And I think she really struggled with that. So she would have taken me down with her for sure.
Right.
I had to, I had to exit. It meant her not seeing her grandkids. It meant her not seeing her only child. It meant devastation for her, but that was on her. That's because of the choices that she was making. Um, so anyway, she when she couldn't reach me all those ways, then she started mailing. She started writing letters and mailing them to me.
Oh, geez.
Oh yeah, no, she was
I
definitely,
knew the phone thing because
yeah,
that was, I remember that being her thing, was the
yeah,
phone thing.
yeah,
And, but
yeah. But
let's,
she started,
wow.
and the letters were, and it was hard. It was another learning curve, because I would get these letters and I would read them, and they were so filled with shame and hate and just digs and toxicity towards me. And
Mhm.
yet I would read them and start receiving them back into my brain, and back into, I was letting her trample through my mind again. And my therapist said to me, "Lana, you cut her out of your life. Stop. If a letter or something comes to you, get rid of it. Don't even
Throw it.
open it." And so I did. I stopped opening all of it. I didn't even return to sender. I just ripped them up and threw them out without reading them. Um so my mom was, I think it was about, I want to say about 5 years of not having her in my life. And I was um I was attending church at the time, because faith is a big part of who I am.
Mhm.
And long story short, again, I had attended an event at our church where it was very cool. Um, it set me free. Um,
Mhm.
so the pastor that night said, "Does anybody here, like, do you need to forgive anybody?" And I was like, "Mm-mm, nope." Right. And he said, we're gonna do a little exercise tonight. So he had members of the prayer team and such that were helping out with the event. He had them stand up at the front and stand in the gap for the person that you needed to forgive. So he had somebody stand there. If you needed to forgive your dad, you went to this person. If you needed to forgive your mom, you went to this person. If you needed to forgive a teacher or clergy or a coworker or whatever, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah. So there was like 6 or 7 people standing there, and he said, I'm just going to give you guys the opportunity to come and forgive this person." And I could feel every fiber of my being, just like my skin was crawling, and I was agitated and thinking, no. And so he started to call up the people, "If you need to forgive your mom, just feel free to line up." And I kept getting this, I call them God nudges, where it was
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
"Go, Lana, go." And I was like, I don't, mm-mm. I don't need to forgive my mom. I forgave my mom a long time ago when I cut her out of my life. We're good. Mm-mm, mm-mm, right?
Yeah.
and literally was like in my chair going, oh, what is this feeling? Like, what is happening right now? So anyway,
Yeah.
it, I kind of had my head down and wasn't paying attention. And it was the God nudge was so huge that I finally caved and was like, okay, okay.
Fine.
If you make a way, the lineup is huge. If you make a way, apparently a lot of people needed to forgive their mom that night. If you make a way, I will go up there. And I had my head down, no joke. No joke. It was however many minutes that passed, and I looked up and there was nobody in line. And I was like, oh, well.
Oh, great. Now I gotta go.
I literally stomped up there and stood like the poor gal that had to deal with me. I love her to bits. I don't know if she remembers this as clearly as I do. But I just stood there and I was stiff as a board, and I could feel how angry I was. And she just took my hands and said, how can I help you? And I said, apparently I need to forgive my mom. And she was like, okay. And I was like, okay, well, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Right. And she was like, well, like as kind as she and gracious as she could be, she was like, well, this is you. And honestly, from that second on, it was like God just he had me in a place where I was just so ready to be rid of the toxicity of unforgiveness. And the floodgates literally opened and I started to forgive my mom, and the guttural wails that came out of me, like I can't even, I could hear myself and was going, is that me? Like, what is happening to me, And I ended up kind of bending over and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was like, because I was fighting it, right? I didn't want to go through that. It was very, very painful. And it was like I could feel God's hand on my back, just gently, surrender. And I literally could hear surrender, surrender, surrender. And I was all the way down, face down on the floor, and literally let it all out. I forgave my mom for everything. And honestly, I left that night. I mean, Jesus changed something inside of me. He changed instantaneously when I was willing to surrender that unforgiveness and just let it go. So I left there, changed, different human being, was on my way like a week later to a ladies retreat that we were going to, and had some time to kill before I had to go pick up my girlfriend. And I thought, well, I'll go get a pedicure while I'm waiting. And I walk in, hadn't seen my mom in years. I walk in and lo and behold, who's sitting in the waiting room waiting to get her nails done?
Your mom.
My mama. And I cannot explain to you guys the sheer terror that I felt in the moment when I saw her. It triggered me so massively. I thought I was going to puke on the spot. Wow. And then I thought it was literally the split second of, no, I can't do this. I'm out of here.
Fight or flight, right?
Fight or flight. Totally fight or flight. She triggered, just seeing her triggered everything.
I'm moving in my chair because I can feel that, because it is that tear. I know that tear. I know that feeling so well.
And that's what I was like. I had to remind myself, you're not afraid of her anymore. You forgave. You let that go, Lana. Remember, you let that go. You and Jesus did that big thing together, and this is not necessary for you to feel like this. And so I stopped, and all of a sudden I was just like peace, just utter peace. And I reached out, put my hand on my mom's arm, and I said, "Hi, Mama." And she kind of looked at me. She couldn't remember my name. Yeah, so
Right.
alcoholism can cause like an alcohol induced dementia. And that was
Right.
definitely what was going on with my mom. So I could tell that she couldn't retrieve my name in her thinking, but there was definitely an awareness. And she said, "Oh, hi." And she kind of looked me, and then she kind of got this look that was familiar to me. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh, you look great," but very kind of
Yeah.
sarcastically. And I said, "Oh, thanks, Mom." Um, we had a short conversation, um, mostly because she started to show me her patterns again very quickly. And I just said, "I have to go now." And the lady's looking at me going, "No, you come
Yeah.
like for my pedicure, right?" And I'm like, I actually can't stay. I knew that I had to go because my mom was escalating and I knew that it was going to get ugly. And so I just excused myself and said, "It was nice to see you." And she said, "You call me. I want to talk to you. You call me." And I said, "We'll have to see about that, Mom." And I just said, "Love you. Bye." And I walked out. I went to my car. I sat in my car and I started to weep just at the sheer thankfulness of being able to be in that place with my mom. And I said to God that day, "If you want me to go to her and take care of her, if she needs me, I will do it. You just need to show me how, if that's what you want to do." That was in November. I didn't see my mom again. And then I got the call um, in February that they had found her deceased in her home on her kitchen
Mm-hmm.
floor. So
Yeah.
it was, God gave me the opportunity to not only forgive her, but that beautiful encounter. Because I remember when I saw her, I thought to myself, she's dying for sure. She's
Yeah.
dying. And so I got to see her at least and
Right.
have a safe, fairly safe encounter. I got to touch her. I mean, I reached out and touched her. That was more contact than we had in 5, almost 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So how did you, so the forgiveness, so after she's passed away,
yeah,
there is that she never apologized. She
right.
never, okay. So how did you deal with that?
Because
Because
it was,
this is, people
yeah,
hang on to that, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
we're gonna go through our lives, and there's gonna be a ton of people. I
yep,
mean, a parent is like, that's probably I'm gonna say that's one of the hardest,
yeah,
but there's gonna be a ton of people that we never, and I have never received an
yep,
apology,
yep. And you never will.
and I never will.
Yep.
And so how did you come to terms with that? Like, how did you get to that point that it was like, it's
I,
okay?
yeah, I knew that I didn't need the apology from her when the moment Jesus and I had that collision at church and I was able to surrender and just
Mm,
forgive. I knew there was such a peace inside of me. It was, you know what? I for I forgave her to set me free.
that's what you said to me that got through my head.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
forgave her to set me free.
Yeah.
Forgiving somebody isn't for them. It's not to make them feel better. It's to set you free.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
for me, I relate it to, the longer you hang on to that, the longer you're tied to that individual.
Absolutely.
And if that individual isn't a part of your life anymore, why do you want to be tied to that
Yep.
person? They
Yep.
aren't with you because of many good reasons.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
not meant to be part of your life. And in my case, that was a huge, when you said that to me, I was like, right, okay. Because
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. I was like, if I am going to be forgiving that person, they're getting away with all their bad behavior.
And that's the big that's the big misconception, that I think there's like that, there's a darkness that would just like to see us reside in unforgiveness,
Yeah.
because it's debilitating. It really is. You don't lead the quality of life you were meant to. You
No.
you won't live out the full potential of your purpose on your life. You won't. There's so much that unforgiveness towards someone will hold you back from.
Yeah.
You know,
Like you said,
and
it makes you sick.
it does make you sick. It
Mhm.
makes you physically sick. It makes you mentally and emotionally sick. It makes you spiritually sick. There's all of a sudden there's all these disconnects happening, inside of you, all because you're holding on to unforgiveness towards somebody that wounded you. And what the heck for? They're carrying on with their lives. They're out there wounding
That's
other
it.
people, and they're out there drinking their coffee in the morning and carrying on with their day, and they're not thinking twice about.
They don't know they don't care what you're doing. They don't think about you at all.
And I'm telling you this, they don't have any idea the impact that they've had on you. They have no clue.
Exactly.
They have
Yep.
no clue. So why
Yeah.
give them that power that they don't you're giving them power that they don't even know they have,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Like, just, yeah.
Don't fuel, like you're fueling their fire or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's the damage you're doing to yourself by not letting that go is
Yeah.
so bad. But I think we all want to react in rage. Like we
Right.
want to, you know what? You hurt me,
Yeah.
you sucker. So I want to hurt you back. And I'm going to hang on to that, but I'm
Yeah.
not going to confront you,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to be really mad at you.
Yeah. Well, and
Thanks.
it's like that whole, there's the revenge piece too, right? Well,
Yes.
and revenge isn't always so blatant and outright obvious, right? How often, when you get into a tiff or a little bicker or whatever with your spouse, how often, ask yourself and be honest, how often are you seeking revenge by, oh, well, you were a bit of an arse to me half an hour ago, so I'm just going to not talk to you right now.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And you do that a million times in your life. It's like you've drank a million drops of poison, and they're just slowly seeping into all the crevices and taking up space, and it's gross.
And if you don't think that isn't flowing out into the rest of your people around you, you're
Absolutely.
wrong. It goes
Absolutely.
out into your workplace. It goes out
Yeah.
into your family, your kids, your significant other, your whoever.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it ties into also, and Suzanne, this is where you can come on in. We are going to talk about forgiving ourselves, because I think that ties in, because it becomes that space of, I don't love myself enough to be strong enough to forgive that person because I'm not worthy. Or we create all those stories, right? Like, and those stories, like, we should all write books because we're really great, and they should all be filled with, like, they're the worst stories in the world, so not good authors.
That is
yeah.
great. That's a great space, Carla, to come in at, because I've just been sitting here taking notes. Lana, your story it's riveting, and I know that my story is drastically different. And I would say that for me, forgiveness has not been a momentous occasion. It's been one literally where I woke up and I've gone, that this must be what forgiveness is. And so I was grabbing words out of what you were saying, surrender and peace and thankfulness and all that kind of stuff. Like it's for me, it's been getting to a place of going, totally surrendered that. I've let that go. And kind of wonderment just at, looking back at my journey and going, the resentment is gone. The pain is gone.
So so we'll go into that again, because how did you get to that place of all of a sudden, oh, okay, like I've let it go? Because that's the thing I think is challenging for so many of us, is the letting go part. Because I've identified letting go, and part of this is in this forgiveness conversation too. If I let go of that piece of me, who am I as a person?
I love it.
I always call it, it's like an ugly, dirty security blanket that we cover ourselves in. We need to let it go. But if we do, we lose our identity. So how did you get to all of a sudden, like, I let that go. Like, that's good. Because not every time it's going to be like that profound thing. Like sometimes it does.
Well, and that's why this whole last week, as I've been thinking about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how do I even speak about this, or how do I even share about this, because it has been so nebulous. So just, a little bit of my background. I don't know much of one specific, like Lana, like you talked about your mom, but I've had communities that I needed. So having left the community of my origin and my upbringing, and the shunning, the shaming, the rejection that I faced there. And then I think I've talked about this a little bit. We jumped into another church community, and it wasn't that long later, we faced another really traumatic shunning and shaming from that community. And that one was almost worse, because when we left our original community, we'd been raised there. We knew what leaving meant. So we had reckoned with that. We had reckoned with that shunning and shaming before we ever left. We expected it. So it wasn't expected. It was still painful, but it was expected. So when we got into this next community, and that one hit us like broadside. We didn't expect it. We didn't know they were capable of it. And so, so that's where I would feel like my forgiveness has circled around. And the one thing I jotted down here is I didn't really seek forgiveness. I started to seek abundance. I was so tired of living in scarcity. I was so tired of pulling onto a parking lot here in my little hometown and literally recognizing the vehicle of people who had hurt. And I'm like, I'm not going to TJ Maxx. I can't face them. And also one day I'm like, am I going to let these people block me from my grocery store, block me from TJ Maxx, block me from this? Why am I afraid? What is stopping me? And so I made a commitment that I would never again I'm being really vulnerable here, actually, because I don't think I've told anybody this. I would never leave a parking lot because I saw someone there who had hurt me or rejected me. And so I started to face, and then like I said, I started to seek, like, how could I capture abundance? Because our life at this point, we were lonely. I was really, really lonely. Friends, people we'd had babies with, we didn't have school. Like, we had literally moved out of everything that gave us certainty or tradition or any of that sort of stuff. And I had kind of woke up one day and said, like, is this what life is for the rest of my life? Like, I'm just going to face loneliness and uncertainty and rejection. And that's when the word abundance came. So I started to seek that. And through seeking abundance and forgiveness, it is when I really dig into it. And again, for me, forgiveness. So that was a really, really difficult word, because again, in our in our conservative community as well. You need to forgive. You should forgive this other person. And all I had seen that modeled as was the other person got away free. And that created so much resentment and anger in me.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I started to seek abundance, I started to recognize that I had all this resentment and anger bottled up in me. And I mean, it wasn't pretty. It was driving my life.
Right.
And I had to face that resentment. And that wasn't fun because it was terrifying. Like, I really connect with what Lana said. When you allow those years of buried emotion, resentment, anger, because we're always told not, those are bad feelings. So rather than feel them at the moment, we stuff them.
Yes.
And when you're finally in a place where you're ready to surrender and let all come out, because that's where the toxicity lies. I'll be honest, thankfully I was home alone in my own house, but I screamed and it just bubbled up. Yeah. And actually what I did is I took a pool noodle and I put all my resentments and my angers on little sticky notes and I put them on my bed and I beat the bed with that to release, because I needed a physical release of that resentment and that anger. Mm-hmm. I gave myself a physical representation of letting go. And I would say of revenge. I took revenge out on those past emotions, those past feelings. I'm not going to call them people because it was the emotion and the feeling towards the people. It wasn't actually the people.
Oh, that's interesting.
I gave myself a physical representation.
Wow, that's, I've never thought of it that way ever. Wow, that's good. That's really good. It's not the person, it's the emotion. Yeah.
It's the emotion and the pain that they caused that you've carried all this time. And after that physical representation of letting of that revenge, of losing my anger through that action, then I went back to something I've learned about an emotion or a feeling only lasts 90 seconds, and then you get to choose what to do with it again. Mm. So after that point, as these remnants, or like I would bump into someone and I'd get that, that panicky feeling, I would remind myself, you've let the past go. You have 90 seconds to feel this. Now, how are you going to choose to move forward in it? So it gave me an ending. And the other thing I think about a lot is something I've heard. I think with drag the past with us, it's like, and not taking that physical time, whatever that looks like for each person. Lana, I looked like you, like finally getting out of that church pew and up front to that woman for forgiveness. Whatever breaks that past tremendous backpack of negative emotions that you've been carrying, it's like you finally take your hand off the hot stove. But you've been literally holding your hand on the hot stove for years. Now you're starting to heal. You took your hand off the hot stove. Now when you meet that person, those people, those circumstances again, it's like you get a little close to that stove and you're, whoa, okay, hot. I let this go. I'm not going back to that stove. I'm not willingly, in the past, I think a lot of us who grew up, we don't even realize our hand is on the stove because it started so young.
Right.
But we, as adults, we do get the opportunity to take our hand off that hot stove. So now as we get close to that hot stove again, we have that 90-second window where we go, I'm feeling this heat. What am I going to do with it? And then start, start to let go. Mm-hmm. And then I think for me, and I heard Lana say her own version of this. She said her mom would continually trample through her mind. And And what was powerful for me was to look at my mind as a piece of prime real estate, like the most exotic place on earth.
Right.
And yet I was continually giving these squatters rights. They just hung out there in my thoughts. And I refused to evict them.
And
Yeah.
Because
they will never ever know how much space they've taken up in your head. They will never know that.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these people, it's like Brene Brown talks about, they were the best they could do at the moment. And I looking back now, I know that. Like, there's no blame. And that's actually another point I wanted to go to. You don't, like, I think unforgiveness is so much about placing blame. And when you're at a point where you realize that they were doing the best they could at the moment with the life that they had, I'm doing the best that I can at the moment. So for me, if I forgave the community, that meant I took the blame away. Where did that blame have to land? Like, in my subconsciously, that blame landed then on me. If it doesn't land on others, it lands on me. And for me to come to a place where there doesn't need to be blame, we're just all humans finding our way through life. And but I think it's what you said, Carla. Like, I had to get to a place where I was worthy of not taking that blame. And I had to be worthy of not taking that blame. I had to be kind of lost my train of thought. I had to be confident that the blame wasn't mine.
Yeah, you know what? That's huge, because I have also, in my situation, I have looked at, okay, what was my role in this situation?
Yes.
Like, and I mean, I went through some horrible things.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like I put myself in danger, but what was okay, it's not one person. Like, it's the whole saying, it takes two to tango, which I don't fully agree with either, but we all play a role in each part. So if I am a strong enough person, why am I not standing up for my own self? And I had, outside of my first marriage, I mean, and Lana knows this very well too, I allowed an individual to run the show in my world who, like, finally, after, I don't know, it took me, I'm a slow learner, but it took me 10 years to finally get it. Like, that person is bad news, like, just a toxic human being that I allowed into my world, and then I allowed her into everybody else's world around me. Why wasn't I strong enough to stand up to that person? Like, I look back at that now and go, like, I need to take responsibility for my actions in that situation, because what the heck was I doing?
But you can't do better until you know better.
Right.
The time you didn't know better, Carla. So that's the whole piece about forgiving ourselves too, right?
Yes.
I let my mom treat me like that because it was the norm. I grew up, she raised me like that. That was all I knew. Getting smacked upside the head, or what, spoken down to, and just like the lies about myself that she spoke into my life, all of those, I've lost my train of thought.
Well, it's all of those things.
It's all, and it's what you say, Lana. That's where self-forgiveness comes in. And I was thinking about it this morning. Like, it's that same, it's the same as that scripture, that love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
We where I grew up, we never heard the as. And I've taken that deeper. Like, I feel like there's only as much as you love or forgive yourself, do you have the capacity to love or forgive another human? So when I am holding myself blamed, when I'm blaming myself for not knowing better, for having done, for being critical, being really critical of myself,
Yeah.
that's who and what I'm going to show up as to all the other humans. So for me, it took loving myself,
Yeah.
forgiving myself, stopping blaming myself, criticizing myself.
Yeah.
And like, this is really, I feel very unqualified to talk in a way, as a child, like, these things that happen to us as children, how do we reconcile, like you say, it was normal for you to be slapped upside the head. It was normal for us to be talked down to and to be belittled and all this kind of stuff. And yet I think for me too, like when I say I was seeking abundance and I found forgiveness, Carla, it goes back to gratitude. Like, I started to find the moments in my past that were so good. They were so rich, and they were all pointing to the life that I have today. They were all directing me. Like, without every step I've taken, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
And it's finding that incredible gratefulness for right where I am today. The strength, the resilience that I've gained, I couldn't have had that without the hand on the hot stove.
Oh,
well,
100%.
People have said, I I will often post about, or in conversation, say, you got to look for the joy. You got to choose the joy. You got to find the joy. And I literally have had people private message me and say, you're so full of, like,
yep.
Yeah.
There's no joy in what you've gone through, Lana. My middle name is Joy. My grandma Joy was like, God gave me that for a reason. Because there is joy. But you got to choose it. I can look back at my life. My life was filled from trauma probably way before, right? Everything points to trauma before I could even speak. And it was kind of just a trauma-filled life because I didn't know any better. But I can the joy in that is that I can look back at those things now and be thankful and filled with gratitude for who I am now, for where I am today, for how far Jesus and I have come today.
Yeah. And I just want to tell you this, Lana, like, so yeah, you probably have suffered trauma maybe while you were still in the womb. But look at a gift. You were given the name Joy.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
for a reason. And I absolutely believe that, right? Like, there is joy. You can find joy. There's joy in forgiveness. There's joy in healing. There's joy in freedom. There's right? There's joy in just in being able to be open to God moving in my life, and being able to open my eyes to things and show me things that need to change, and where I'm struggling or where I'm challenged or where I need to grow. And those are opportunities, and opportunities are like those. That's just joy to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think there's, it's also the ability to actually say thank you to those individuals who have done the wrongdoings or the damage or whatever, because what that's done, I always say this, I thank those people because they taught me how not to be as a human being.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how, I mean, here's the thing, we at the same time, we treat people, or we teach people how to treat us.
Yes.
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 So I taught my mom that it was okay for her to treat me like that. But I've forgiven myself for that because I didn't know any better.
Right.
Little Lana didn't know any better.
And
Mhm.
Teenage
that's
Lana didn't,
where,
right? Like,
that's huge, because it's that whole thing. How can you possibly say that, especially an abusive situation, how can you, as the one being abused, say, well, I taught them how? That's a disconnect for a lot, because, but it is, I did the same thing. I allowed that to happen. If I had been stronger, but I was doing what, like, I wasn't strong enough then.
yeah,
I finally got to that place where I finally could.
yeah.
But
Well-
I mean, you do. It's what you allow. And I mean, it, as human beings, we
Forgiveness,
do the best what we can with,
yeah.
we're doing the,
Forgiveness has allowed, the other thing that it allows us to do is, okay, so some of these sayings are cheesy, and I know
Yeah.
people think that, but for me, the reality of the day was learning that hurt people do hurt people.
That's a
Hurt,
huge
hurt
one.
people will always hurt people, and until they get their blip resolved.
Yep.
I almost said it. I was going to say it too. Until
I would have said it, but
I know, until they get their emoji poop resolved,
Yes.
they're gonna hurt people. If you're hurting inside, you're hurting other people because you're hurting. And I know I've had people say to me, that's such a BS excuse. It's like an excuse to keep hurting people. But here's the thing. I was hurting people too. I was hurting my husband. I was hurting my kids. I was hurting my relationships. There was parts of me that were hurting my mom. I
Well,
hurt my mom,
and
but
Lana,
yeah,
can I jump in on that?
yeah.
Yeah.
We so often, what's the word? When you give an alcoholic or an addict money, enable.
Enable.
We
Yes.
continually enable the hurting people by
Yes.
allowing them to continue to hurt us. If that hurting,
Because we're hurting though.
because we're hurting, but we say, well, but if I stop going to this person, they'll hit bottom. Yeah, that's their choice. That's their
Yep.
consequence. Get it through your head that it's okay for them to hit bottom.
Yep.
You're actually, all you're doing is allowing, so let's imagine the bottom to be very rough rock, and you're just both bumping along the bottom, whereas if you let go, at least you rise. And the other person may bump along the bottom for a while longer, but at least you've modeled what it looks like to stop bumping that bottom.
Yes.
And if we call that an excuse, then we're continually enabling the people in our life rather than pointing towards a better way.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is, hurt people are going to surround themselves with hurt and broken people.
For sure.
Lana, we did it.
We did it for years.
And I've looked back on that time and just gone like, another person in that circle, we've talked about it and gone, what the hell? Like, what were we doing? How did we even live like that? We kind of look back at that. I mean, while that wasn't all horrible stuff, obviously, like there was, we had good stuff in there too. But I mean, really, how did we? I don't know how we survived.
We weren't living. We were just existing and going through the motions, but that's the epitome of trauma and its impact on your life, and how it, you got unresolved trauma in your life. You got unforgiveness in your life, watch what it does. It literally sinks its clutches into you like this and just squeezes the living life right out of you.
It's no different to me than a group of people who will use drinking. Friday comes, everybody's had a horrible week, so we're all going to rally around. We're all going to get together Friday night, and we're all going to drink our faces off, and we're all going to like grind that horrible stuff that's happened. We're going to go home. We're going to go about our next week, and we're going to all get together again next Friday, and we're going to grind the same thing.
Yeah.
There's never a resolve. There's never a healing part of it. But once you start the healing, you see who comes with you. And it's like the example you used, Suzanne, about like being on the bottom. People who do not want to be healed, or they're not ready to do that, they aren't coming with you, and they're going to try and drag you back.
Yes.
Because what are you doing? Like, I remember for a year, I quit drinking for a year. In amongst that, after I left my first husband, and I quit drinking for a year. And I remember people that I knew very, very well saying to me, well, like, is this going to be forever? Like, how long is this for? And then the next question was, well, if you're not drinking, maybe I have a problem too. It comes back to that mirror thing.
Yes.
And it's terrifying for people who aren't ready to go with you.
Yes.
And those are the people, unfortunately, you have to leave behind.
Yes.
Until they get it.
Yes.
And you know what? It's people are in your life in various stages for various reasons, and not everybody's meant to be with you for your whole entire life.
Yes.
Profound change in your own life will make the dysfunctional relationships in your life, or the toxic relationships in your life, look in the mirror.
Yes.
And if they're not ready, they will flee. They will fight, and they, or they will just, I'm out of here. I can't, you're crazy. What, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And stories and all the
Yeah.
rest of it. And you have to rise above it for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Lana, go
ahead.
You were saying earlier about people who private message you or whatever, and they say, like, if you're full of joy, you're just, you're full of the poop emoji.
Yeah.
For those, if we draw a line in the sand and we say, okay, maybe my past had absolutely no joy, like let's go this way. My past was absolutely joyless, nothing to be grateful for in my past, nothing abundant in my past, but I'm going to choose to draw a line in the sand today, and I'm going to find, it's going to be like a treasure hunt. I'm going to find the joy right where my feet are right now, because actually the past is gone.
Right.
What we have about the past is just emotions. It's feelings. It isn't reality anymore. So maybe people say, well, it's impossible to actually have joy because my past has been, okay, I get it. But does that mean that you are shackled to a life of no joy? We get to choose right here, right now, what is the joy in the moment. And every one of us has it. I mean, we've got the earth we live on, and it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. We have vehicles, we have technology that lets us communicate with each other in spite of what the world is in right now. We've had ways of connecting with humans that 30 years ago we would never have had.
Right.
We have so much joy right here, abundance right here, right now in the moment. And our past may be 100% devoid of it, but that doesn't mean our future needs to be.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah,
exactly. And you can see it in people who choose not to find that joy. You can see it as plain as day.
Yeah.
I never would have got it like 15 years ago. I wouldn't have understood this conversation for 2 seconds. Would not
No.
have.
Me neither.
It's like, you
No.
people are full of it. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Because
This conversation would have agitated me. It would have, yeah.
oh man, the sarcastic things that would have
Yeah.
flown out of my mouth.
Yeah.
For sure, because I wasn't ready for it.
No.
It's that ugly security blanket we love to hang on to.
Yeah.
And until we're ready to let that go, you have to find, and it's scary. That's a scary thing because you're letting go of what you know,
Your identity,
what you think is normal. And it's so far from normal. Like when you're talking you guys both said it, like just that terrifying feeling you have, like Lana, when you saw your mom for the first time, and Suzanne, when you were talking about being in the parking lot, I've driven out of a parking lot because I've done it. I'm not going in that store. Forget it. Because I'll run faster than I can drive, probably. Like, I don't want to have that, now I wouldn't care so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it when, it's that, and I fight with that a lot still, is that in certain situations, depending on what it is, just that wanting to like run away. Like, I need to get out of here because I can't handle it. And have had to sit and like calm myself and realize like, I'm okay. I'm not going to die if I have to confront that person. That's the thing. I think I get so filled with fear about like what could happen. Like, I literally feel like I'm going to die because it overwhelms.
But if you sit with that, even for just a few seconds and go, just think logically, because that's again, like what we're talking about, these triggers that we face, there are fight or flight coming in and saying, oh, there's danger. You've got, to survive, you've got to flee. Well, we're adults. We can think this through. We can take that 30 seconds or whatever we need and go, is it in my best interest to walk into the store? Am I strong enough, confident enough, resilient enough to deal with whatever I need to face in this store? And then if we choose to leave the parking lot, we're at least not leaving it from a fight or flight. We're leaving it from okay, I've made a logical decision. This is not in my best interest today. Like for you, Lana, it was in your best interest to have a complete separation from your mom.
Yeah.
Not continually put yourself in the way of that.
Yeah.
For me, because there's so many people I'd have to run from, it's not in my best interest to keep running.
Right.
It's in my best interest to logically think through it calmly. And then I also I find the love for that person while I sit there for those 30 seconds and, okay, can I walk in and face them with love? Right.
Yeah. That's so, it's huge because that reaction, you want to, it's that taking that, like you say, that 30 seconds or whatever, taking that however long and just kind of going and just taking a step back for a minute before the reaction. Let's just, and what is the best for us? Is that the wisest thing? Because you know what, sometimes like whether you're strong enough or not, putting yourself in front of a person who is a damaging individual, sometimes it's just not in your best interest because it just isn't. It's not a fight or flight thing. It's just not.
Right.
I think, Lana, in your situation, like that was something bigger than all of us letting you have that moment for sure.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, I think we talked about this before we went live, but we were talking about the holding, how did we talk about that? It was to do, we were talking about like if our spouse makes us mad
Hmm.
and we're going to
Oh,
be like, yeah,
Revenge. Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about that for a minute. Who wants to go first?
I don't know. It was, I mean, yeah, we were just talking kind of behind the scenes about, you know, there's forgiveness on what seems like this big huge scale, but then there's forgiveness on smaller scales too, where you're, I mean, it's all profound really,
it is.
but you know, like where you're it's that whole um you know, you're bickering with your spouse or you're bickering with somebody or whatever, and
Kids.
there's yeah, your kids or whatever, and there's that, well, you know, you were a jerk to me half an hour ago, so I'm just not going to talk to you right now,
Mhm.
or I'm nah, 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 you know, and you get all snippy, and we come at each other like that, and it's those, it's not just big acts of wrongdoing, it's those little acts too that are like tiny drops of poison, and when we do them and we keep doing them over and over again, it's like taking those, ingesting those tiny drops of poison, and they just, all of a sudden they have filled up these creeks and crevices inside of you, and there's so many drops that, you know,
Yeah.
you've got this toxic yuck built up inside of you.
So,
It's funny.
Lana, do you have a when you literally hit that situation of like, you know, your spouse, your partner, and you would just want to dig a little bit, do you have a practical boots on the ground, do something to pull yourself back and go, do I really want to do this? Or like, what do you use in that moment for your
I think
reminder
that,
or tool?
you know, I'm a work in progress with that for sure. Um, but it's having an awareness,
Hmm.
like a self-awareness of like just listening to yourself and being aware of yourself and how
Mhm.
you're responding and reacting to people. I My goal ultimately is to be a peacemaker. I
Oh,
just want to be a peacemaker. I just, I want to exude peace. I want to,
Mhm.
I want to just, right? When people are around me, I want them to feel peace and joy and all the things that come with that.
Yeah.
I don't want them ever to feel judged or confronted or, you know,
Mhm.
shamed or like that would, yeah, I just want to be a peacemaker.
Because I think too, when we're in that moment of
Mhm.
there's something's triggered. Like it's
Absolutely.
deeper than
That's
what,
that's
you're
exactly
not just
what it
you're not
is.
just annoyed for no reason.
Nope.
I
mm,
don't think.
No,
I
you're
don't
not.
know if it's, or is it possible to be annoyed for no reason? Maybe,
no.
but like for the most part, it's there's something deeper
Yep.
there. And I know for my, like in my situation, I know when I react or respond and it's like not very nice, I instantly feel terrible. Like
Yeah.
that was not nice.
Yeah.
And I might be super mad about whatever, but something, it's just come out how it's come out. And it's like, why did I, like that was
Yeah.
not right. And in like apologizing, like a
Yeah.
huge, like I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not perfect at this by any means because, and it's funny what can trigger because it can be something that you think you've resolved.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden it could be like a like not even it wasn't meant to hurt. It was, but it's just the thing. And it just hits you and it's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
And then the reaction comes. But like I'm I try to be very good about making sure that after if I can't catch myself, if I go there to really apologize.
Well, and just to throw a book suggestion out there, so triggers are trauma. right? They're something that has happened
Yeah.
that our body is still holding on to, we are still holding on to, we're still working through. Maybe we haven't touched on it at all. Maybe we're completely unaware. Maybe it's a trigger that like comes from a time that we don't even remember. But a good book about that, and to kind of explain trauma and trigger and stuff like that is The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Body Keeps the Score. My mind is completely blank. It's sitting over there. I could grab it. But anyways, that's a good one. And then Carla, I texted you links. I don't know if you want to post them. But Lisa, how do you say her last name? Lisa Turkhurst. Anyway.
Okay.
I sent you the links to the book, her new book that's coming out in November. There's a book, and then there's a study guide to go along with it, and it's called Forgiving What You Can't Forget.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So she has a story of infidelity in her marriage, and just the whole process of working through forgiving and stuff like that. So her story is very powerful. I have no doubt in my mind that book will be life-changing for many, many people.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could probably go on and on and on this conversation for hours. Like I said before we started, we should just have it just running. We could just cover all the things because they all tie, right? Like everything ties together in this, but I think we will probably end it here because there's lots of Saturdays we can talk more about these things, and you guys are going to be back for sure on other topics.
Yeah.
We have to come up, Lana and I are going to come up with a date to talk about PTSD.
Yes.
Ooh.
And Suzanne, I did find somebody to talk about people pleasing. So we've got that conversation to have.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we're going to have lots of good ones. So we've got, I think I have in my book, I think I wrote down, what did I say? 16 topics. So, there's a few things to chat about, but
there's always stuff to talk about.
Yeah. And I think what I always say is real people, real conversations, real stories, not just gurus, right?
Yeah.
Like I want our conversations to always be people like us, because somebody out there is going to see this conversation and we look like them, or they, there's something there that's going to help them from each of our own perspectives and our own stories. And I think that's what helps.
It's important to share the stories, because your story, your freedom can literally be the catalyst to somebody else's freedom.
Yes.
So we have a responsibility to share our experiences and the ability to overcome them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So do you guys have any closing things you'd like to say before we go?
I think we covered it all. It was a great conversation. I loved it.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I loved meeting you, Lana, and hearing your story. I love what you said, the last part, just being aware. I just love that. And thank you again, Carla, for giving us this opportunity. I tell you, it's just a nugget of awesomeness right here, right now. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys just coming on with me and thinking, kind of believing in what this platform is all about. I appreciate you both very much. So thank you guys so much for coming on. And we'll carry on with our Saturday, and we'll get those links posted in the comments for the books that you suggested, Lana, and that one that you mentioned without the link. I can't remember what.
I'll get you the link right now.
Yeah, please. Yeah. That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for everybody that tuned in and watched, thank you guys for joining us, and we will catch you next Saturday. So everybody have a great Saturday and have a good week.
Thank you all.
We'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.